You wake up, your eyes adjust to the dark, and your hand instinctively reaches for the glowing rectangle on your nightstand. Before your feet even touch the floor, the race has already begun. Notifications pile up on the screen, emails demand immediate responses, and social feeds bombard you with curated images of everyone else living perfectly optimized lives. A familiar tightness grips your chest, a suffocating weight that makes it hard to draw a full breath. This is the baseline reality for millions of people. We are living through an invisible modern epidemic of anxiety and paralyzing perfectionism. Despite existing in an era of unprecedented comfort and safety, we are utterly drowning in psychological distress. Every single decision, from choosing a career path to picking a restaurant for dinner, feels like a life or death crossroads. We are terrified of making the wrong choice because we live in a culture absolutely obsessed with flawless success. The margin for error feels non-existent. This constant state of hypervigilance is exhausting. You spend your days mapping out every possible scenario, trying to anticipate every pitfall, desperately attempting to control an uncontrollable future. When things go exactly as planned, you don't feel joy. You just feel a fleeting, temporary relief. And when things inevitably deviate from the plan, the mental crash is devastating. You are left entirely paralyzed, unable to move forward, trapped in a cycle of overthinking and profound dread. Why does this happen? To understand this paralysis, we have to examine the root of our fear. We need to step away from the noise, sit down in a quiet, dimly lit room, and look at the toxic conditioning we've absorbed since childhood. Society has taught us a devastating, unspoken mathematical equation. Your tangible output equals your total human worth. If you succeed, if you win, if you produce, you are deemed valuable. Conversely, if you stumble, if you make a mistake, or if you outright fail, you are deemed defective. This conditioning creates incredibly fragile egos that require constant external validation just to survive. We do not simply fear the practical consequences of a failure, like losing a bit of money or wasting an afternoon. We fear the existential annihilation of our own identity. If your entire sense of self is built on what you achieve, what exactly are you when you achieve nothing? This fragile ego is the true source of your paralysis. You procrastinate, you hesitate, and you self-sabotage not because you are lazy, but because not trying at all feels safer than trying and being proven unworthy. It is a protective mechanism designed to shield your identity from shattering. But this shield is actually a cage. It keeps you locked in a small, suffocating comfort zone where true growth is fundamentally impossible. To break out of this cage, we need a radical antidote. We don't need another superficial life hack, a morning routine, or a time management app. We need a complete rewiring of our mental operating system. Enter the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. Forget the modern, pop culture caricature of the Stoic as a grim, emotionless robot who suppresses their feelings until they eventually break. True Stoicism is a dynamic, incredibly resilient framework designed specifically for navigating chaos without losing your mind. It was forged in the fires of antiquity, practiced by individuals who faced adversity we can barely comprehend today. At the very center of this philosophical operating system is a concept so radical, so counterintuitive, that it feels almost unnatural at first glance. It is called Amor Fati asterisk. Amor Fati asterisk is a Latin phrase that directly translates to a love of fate. It is the ultimate, time-tested weapon against the paralyzing fear of failure and modern anxiety. But to wield it, you must understand a crucial distinction. Most people, when faced with an unavoidable failure or hardship, eventually reach a state of resignation. They let out a heavy sigh and say, "Well, I can't change this terrible situation, so I guess I just have to endure it." Resignation is passive. It is the mindset of a defeated victim simply waiting for the storm to pass. Amor Fati is the exact opposite. It is an active, fierce, and unapologetic embrace of reality. It is looking at the exact same terrible event, the exact same failure, and saying, "I will not just accept this, I will love it." You choose to embrace the hardship as if you had specifically asked for it to happen. You might be thinking this sounds delusional. How can you possibly love a painful rejection, a humiliating mistake, or a shattered plan? The secret lies in a profound psychological paradigm shift. You have to consciously change a single preposition in your internal monologue. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening asterisk to asterisk me?" you must begin to ask, "How is this happening asterisk for asterisk me?" When you believe the universe is happening asterisk to you, you are a passive target. Every setback is perceived as a personal attack, an injustice that shouldn't exist. Your energy is entirely consumed by wishing the past was different. But when you flip the script and believe that everything happens for asterisk you, the entire world transforms. Every failure, every rejection, and every embarrassment becomes a customized, necessary lesson designed specifically for your personal evolution. This mental flip completely neutralizes the fear of making the wrong choice. If every outcome, whether it is a resounding success or a miserable failure, is ultimately asterisk for asterisk your benefit, then there are no wrong choices. There is only data, experience, and growth. The heavy, suffocating weight of perfectionism begins to evaporate. You are no longer playing a game where you can lose your worth. You are playing a game where every move makes you stronger. Adopting asterisk Amor Fati turns your fragile ego into an anti-fragile weapon. You stop hiding from the possibility of failure and start stepping boldly into the arena, knowing that whatever happens, you will use it. You will love it. This isn't a magical spell that makes pain disappear instantly, but it is a perspective that gives your pain profound meaning. And meaning is the ultimate cure for anxiety. This radical shift in perspective does not happen overnight. It is a daily practice, a muscle that must be intentionally broken down and rebuilt, and we are going to build it together. Over the next 3 videos, we will explore exactly how to implement this philosophy into your messy, unpredictable modern life. If you are tired of living under the crushing weight of anxiety and the fear of failure, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this journey. Before you click away, you have a crucial piece of homework. I want you to identify one specific thing that is causing you intense anxiety or fear of failure right now. Grab a physical pen and write it down on a piece of paper. Stare at it, acknowledge its weight, and let it exist in the real world. Keep that paper safe, because very soon we are going to completely dismantle its power over you. Look at that piece of paper you wrote your fear on at the end of our last session. Or better yet, think about the meticulously detailed, multi-year plan you have mapped out in your head. We cling to these rigid plans like life rafts in a stormy sea, convinced that if we just strategize hard enough, we can bend the universe to our will. We spend countless hours obsessing over every variable, trying to force reality into a neat, predictable box. This is the greatest, most exhausting lie of the modern age, the illusion of control. We suffer intensely because we fundamentally believe we are the architects of our outcomes. When things go our way, we falsely attribute the success entirely to our own genius, inflating our egos even further. But when the outcome deviates even slightly from our grand design, our entire emotional state crashes into the ground. We feel a profound sense of betrayal, as if the universe has broken a contract we never actually signed. To stop this endless cycle of crashing and burning, we have to surrender the steering wheel. To understand how to let go, we must look back to a man who understood powerlessness better than anyone in history. Epictetus was a prominent Stoic philosopher, but he did not start his life in a position of wealth or privilege. He was born a slave in the Roman Empire, meaning he had absolutely zero legal authority over his own body, his location, or his daily labor. Yet, despite his extreme physical subjugation, he developed a psychological framework so profoundly liberating that emperors eventually sought his counsel. Epictetus realized that human suffering stems entirely from a catastrophic misallocation of our mental energy. He formalized this realization into a masterclass of mental resilience that we now call the dichotomy of control. Imagine a circle drawn in the sand right in front of you. Inside this circle are the very few things actually up to you: your beliefs, your intentions, your judgments, and your immediate, voluntary actions. Everything outside that circle is entirely out of your hands and fundamentally none of your business. This external realm includes the state of the economy, the weather, the algorithms governing your business, and crucially, the opinions of other people. Most importantly, the final outcome of your efforts lives entirely outside that circle of control. You can study for weeks, but you do not control the exact questions that will appear on the exam. You can prepare a flawless presentation, but you do not control the mood or the biases of the client evaluating it. You can be a perfect partner, but you cannot force another human being to love you back. When you try to control these external outcomes, you are fighting a war you are mathematically guaranteed to lose. This brings us to the core of why we are so terrified of making mistakes and falling short. We have mistakenly anchored our entire self-worth to the external outcome, which we never possess the power to dictate in the first place. When you judge yourself based on the final result, you are handing the keys to your self-esteem over to random chance. You are allowing external forces to dictate your internal peace. But if you shift your focus to only judge yourself on your effort and your intentions, then failure takes on an entirely different definition. A rejected application, a bombed interview, or a failed business venture is no longer a reflection of your intrinsic worth. It is merely neutral data provided by reality. It is the universe offering you immediate, unbiased feedback on your current approach, showing you exactly where the gaps in your knowledge lie. This is where the concept of Amor Fati transforms from a neat philosophical idea into a massive tactical advantage. When you face a brutal rejection or a bad grade, your default biological reaction is shame and retreat. But if you apply a fierce love of fate, you actively embrace that sting because it provides unparalleled clarity. You love the failure because it forcefully course-corrects you away from a path that was fundamentally flawed or misaligned. You begin to realize that every mistake is just a necessary stepping stone, efficiently guiding you toward ultimate competence. You stop viewing failures as stop signs and start viewing them as directional arrows, knowing the worst-case scenario is no longer an identity crisis, but just a lesson. Knowing this logically is one thing, but feeling it emotionally when you are standing on the edge of a major risk is entirely different. To bridge this gap between logic and emotion, the Stoics utilized a brilliant psychological tool called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. Modern self-help gurus constantly tell you to only visualize success, to manifest your victory, and to aggressively banish all negative thoughts. The Stoics thought this was incredibly dangerous, fragile advice. If you only ever imagine a flawless victory, you are leaving your mind completely exposed to the shock and devastation of a chaotic reality. Instead of running from the worst-case scenario, you must intentionally and bravely walk right into it. Before you launch a new project, ask someone out, or publish a piece of creative work, sit down in a quiet room and vividly imagine it failing spectacularly. Picture the rejection email arriving in your inbox. Imagine the zero views on your project, or visualize the awkward silence after a terrible pitch. Do not flinch away from the mental image. Sit with the embarrassment, the financial loss, or the bruised ego. Feel the deep discomfort of that hypothetical reality washing over you. Once you are fully immersed in that worst-case scenario, ask yourself one simple, grounding question. Would I survive this? The answer is almost always a resounding yes. You would wake up the next day, the sun would rise, you would breathe in oxygen, and you would simply try again. By premeditating on the failure before you even begin, you surgically strip away its mysterious, terrifying power. You have already emotionally digested the worst possible outcome, meaning the paralyzing anxiety surrounding it simply vanishes. When you deeply accept that the worst case is highly survivable and that the final outcome is completely out of your hands anyway, a profound weight lifts off your shoulders. You are finally free to just do the work without the suffocating pressure of perfectionism. You pour your absolute best effort into your internal circle of control, treating whatever happens outside of it as a joyful surprise rather than a terrifying threat. You start playing a defensive game of avoiding loss, and you start playing fully engaged with the present moment. I want to hear about the valuable data you have collected in your own life so far. Drop down into the comments right now and share a past failure that actually ended up leading you to something much greater. Your specific story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today to break their own cycle of paralysis. Then, for your homework before the next video, take the biggest goal you are currently working toward and spend 5 minutes visualizing it completely falling apart. Make absolute peace with that disastrous outcome today, because once you accept the worst, you become unstoppable. Picture a biting winter night in 1914. A massive chemical explosion violently rips through the laboratory of a legendary, world-renowned inventor. Decades of priceless prototypes, secret formulas, and irreplaceable life's work are instantly engulfed in brilliant green and yellow flames. The inventor is 67 years old, standing in the freezing cold, watching his entire legacy and millions of dollars turn to ash. By all conventional logic, this should be the tragic, spirit-breaking end of his story. But the inventor does not panic, and he certainly does not weep. Instead, he turns to his 24-year-old son, who is standing completely paralyzed in shock. He tells the boy to run and fetch his mother and all her friends immediately. "Tell them to hurry," the old man says with a genuine smile, "because they will never see a fire like this again." He stood there, warming his hands by the blaze of his own ruined empire, completely at peace with the destruction. The next morning, walking through the smoldering, unrecognizable ruins of his life's work, he told a reporter something profound. He said, "There is great value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up, and thank God we can start anew." He completely rebuilt his operation and returned to inventing the very next day. This is not just a neat historical anecdote about resilience. This is the ultimate, real-world manifestation of the ancient philosophy we are studying. This inventor didn't just practice passive acceptance, he practiced psychological alchemy. He instinctively understood a principle articulated centuries earlier by the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Aurelius wrote that a blazing fire makes a flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. Think about the physical mechanics of a fire for a moment. If you throw a small log onto a weak, flickering candle, the candle is instantly snuffed out. A weak mind operates exactly like that fragile candle. The slightest breeze of adversity or the smallest log of failure completely extinguishes its motivation and spirit. But if you throw that exact same log into a roaring, established bonfire, the outcome is entirely different. The bonfire does not just survive the obstacle, it aggressively consumes it. The obstacle literally becomes the fuel that allows the fire to burn exponentially hotter and brighter than it did before. This is the core mechanism of Amor Fati. The fire does not care what you throw into it. It will use everything as fuel. To transform your own mind into a roaring bonfire, you have to move past theoretical acceptance and implement a practical strategy. We can break this psychological transmutation down into a highly actionable three-step formula. You must memorize this sequence so you can deploy it the second disaster strikes. Step 1 is to acknowledge the burn. We must dispel a toxic, pervasive myth about Stoicism right now. Embracing your fate does not mean pretending that emotional pain doesn't hurt. When a tragedy strikes, a business collapses, or a profound failure occurs, you are absolutely allowed to bleed. If you suppress the initial shock, grief, or anger, you aren't practicing philosophy. You're practicing dangerous emotional avoidance. Feel the sting of the failure fully, but put a strict, non-negotiable time limit on your wallowing. Give yourself an hour or a day to be frustrated, and then immediately move to step 2, radical acceptance. Once the initial wave of emotion crests, you must instantly drop the agonizing desire for a time machine. Radical acceptance means looking at the smoking ruins of your plans and refusing to negotiate with reality. You must stop saying, "If only I had done this differently," or "This shouldn't have happened." The event is already locked in the past, forever etched into the unchangeable timeline of the universe. Denying reality only creates immense psychological friction, draining the precious energy you need to move forward. By radically accepting the present moment exactly as it is, you instantly stop the internal bleeding. You clear the mental fog of regret and prepare yourself for the final, most crucial phase of the process. Step 3 is the alchemy itself. This is where you actively transmute the heavy lead of your failure into the gold of a new advantage. You look squarely at the disaster and ask a transformative, proactive question. How can I use this exact circumstance to become better, smarter, or stronger? You aggressively hunt for the hidden leverage buried within the wreckage of your original plan. You decide that the obstacle was specifically placed there by the universe to force your necessary evolution. A devastating layoff becomes the brutal but necessary catalyst to finally pursue a career you actually care about. A painful, humiliating rejection becomes the mirror that reveals the exact skill gaps you need to master. A catastrophic failure in a project teaches you a lesson about risk management that no textbook ever could. You are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are an alchemist who extracts power from pain. However, you cannot expect to successfully apply this formula to a devastating life crisis if you haven't trained for it first. You do not build a roaring bonfire by starting with massive, damp logs. You build the Amor Fati muscle in the low-stakes training ground of micro-adversities. These are the tiny, irritating inconveniences that happen to you every single day. They are the minor disruptions that usually ruin your mood for absolutely no logical reason. We are going to start actively using these mundane moments as philosophical repetitions in the gym of life. When you hit a massive traffic jam that makes you late, you do not pound the steering wheel in blind frustration. You smile and realize fate just gifted you an extra 40 minutes of uninterrupted time to listen to an audiobook or practice deep breathing. You absorb the delay and use it to cultivate your own patience. When a torrential downpour cancels your long-awaited outdoor weekend plans, you don't complain bitterly about the unfair weather. You embrace it as a forced, guilt-free opportunity to rest your exhausted body and recharge your mind indoors. When someone leaves a rude comment online or cuts you off in the grocery store line, you do not retaliate in anger. You view their poor behavior as a free, real-time sparring session for your own emotional regulation. Every single inconvenience is a beautifully disguised chance to prove that your mind is vastly stronger than your external circumstances. You are systematically training your brain to hunt for the good in the bad. Over time, this daily practice completely rewires your default neurological response to stress. When the massive, life-altering tragedies eventually do arrive, your mind will already know exactly how to consume them. If you are finding value in this mental rewiring, hit the like button right now so the algorithm can push this philosophy to someone else who desperately needs it. We are building a community of individuals who refuse to be paralyzed by the fear of failure. Now, it is time to take this concept out of the theoretical realm and put it into practice with your homework. Over the next 24 hours, you're going to actively hunt for one micro-adversity. It could be a spilled cup of hot coffee, a delayed train, a sudden Wi-Fi outage, or a minor disagreement. The exact moment it happens, I want you to pause, take a deep breath, and verbally say the word good or the phrase Amor Fati out loud. Speak it into existence before the frustration can take root in your chest. Claim the obstacle before it claims your mood, and watch how quickly the anxiety simply evaporates. You claimed the spilled coffee and the minor inconveniences, but now we must confront the true leviathan of modern anxiety. It is not the daily friction that ultimately crushes us, but the massive, invisible script we carry in our minds. From the moment we are born, society hands us a rigid, uncompromising timeline for what constitutes a successful life. You are supposed to graduate with honors by 22, secure a high-paying dream job by 25, and own a beautiful home by 30. We mortgage our present happiness for a future that is mathematically impossible to guarantee. When our actual, messy reality inevitably deviates from this flawless timeline, we don't just feel a little disappointed. We spiral into a deep existential panic, convinced that we have fundamentally failed at life itself. We look around at the carefully curated highlight reels of our peers and feel a suffocating sense of inadequacy. But this paralyzing panic only exists because we are desperately clinging to a cultural fantasy. To truly integrate Amor Fati into your lifelong philosophy, you must be willing to physically tear up that societal script. You have to completely let go of the life you meticulously planned in order to deeply love the life that is actually waiting for you. Consider the all-too-common modern tragedy of losing a so-called dream job. You pour your entire identity into a prestigious corporate role, sacrificing your health and relationships to climb the ladder, only to be abruptly laid off on a random Tuesday. In the context of the script, this is a catastrophic, humiliating failure that destroys your self-worth. It feels like the universe has unfairly ripped the rug out from under your feet. Yet, how many times have we heard the exact same aftermath from people who endure this specific trauma? Stripped of their golden handcuffs, they are forced to completely reevaluate what actually matters to their soul. They take a massive pay cut to work in a different field, or they finally start that modest creative business they always dreamed about. Years later, they look back at that devastating layoff not as a tragedy, but as the single greatest rescue mission of their lives. The destruction of their planned life was the exact, painful prerequisite for finding their authentic one. This is the profound power of trusting the chaotic, unwritten path over the rigid expectations of society. However, to maintain this level of radical trust, you cannot rely on fleeting bursts of motivation or temporary inspiration. You must build a structured, unbreakable mental environment to protect your peace of mind. This begins the very moment you open your eyes by designing a dedicated Stoic daily routine. Instead of immediately checking your phone and flooding your brain with cortisol, spend your first waking 5 minutes setting a philosophical intention. Mentally prepare yourself for the absolute certainty that unexpected things will go wrong today. Traffic will be bad, people will be rude, and your carefully crafted schedule will likely fall apart by noon. Decide in advance that no matter what chaos unfolds, you will actively choose to embrace and love it. As you move through your day, you will inevitably encounter unexpected friction that spikes your heart rate. Your boss might send a passive-aggressive email, or a major project might suddenly experience a critical failure. This is exactly when you must deploy a technique we call the pause. Before your biological fight-or-flight response takes over, physically stop moving, take one deep breath, and mentally whisper the words Amor Fati. This micro moment of space prevents you from reacting impulsively and allows you to respond with intentional, grounded clarity. You remind yourself that this specific problem is not an interruption to your day. It is the actual work of your day. It is exactly what you are supposed to be facing right now to build your resilience. Finally, as the day concludes, you must close the loop with a philosophical evening journal. Sit quietly with a notebook and review the events of the past 12 hours with complete, ruthless objectivity. Write down your mistakes, your moments of anxiety, and your perceived failures without a single ounce of self-judgment. Ask yourself, what did I fear today, and how did reality prove that my fear was entirely exaggerated? By consistently processing your daily failures on paper, you prevent them from quietly accumulating into long-term, chronic anxiety. When you commit to this daily practice, you begin to experience a profound, permanent psychological shift. You realize that everything we have discussed in this series points toward a radical redefinition of what it means to be free. Modern culture falsely promises that freedom is achieved by gaining total control over your environment, your finances, and your reputation. But as we have seen, the external world is inherently chaotic and completely indifferent to your personal desires. If your peace requires the world to behave exactly as you want it to, you will be a miserable, anxious prisoner for your entire life. True freedom is fundamentally an inside job, built on the foundation of radical acceptance. It is the unshakable realization that while you cannot control the events happening around you, you possess absolute sovereignty over your response to them. This is the ultimate, unbreakable superpower of the Stoic mind. If you lose your wealth, you embrace the opportunity to learn frugality and detach from materialism. If someone ruins your reputation, you learn the liberating power of living without the validation of strangers. When you reach a point where you genuinely love whatever fate hands you, the world loses all its leverage over your emotions. You can no longer be threatened, you can no longer be disappointed, and you can no longer be paralyzed by fear. You become psychologically bulletproof, capable of walking through any storm with a quiet, unshakable confidence. You do not have to spend another decade of your life suffocating under the weight of impossible expectations. You can step off the exhausting treadmill of perfectionism right now, today, and simply refuse to participate in the panic. Life is going to be messy, unpredictable, and entirely off script, and that is exactly what makes it a beautiful, worthwhile adventure. Embrace the uncertainty, welcome the failures, and let the fire of adversity forge you into something entirely unbreakable. The universe is not happening to you. It is happening exclusively for you. If this philosophy has shifted your perspective and brought you peace, do not let it stop here. Share this entire four-part playlist with a friend, a family member, or a colleague who is silently drowning in modern anxiety. We all know someone who desperately needs permission to let go of their own suffocating script. Thank you for joining me on this profound journey into the Stoic mind and doing the difficult internal work. Please subscribe to the channel so we can continue building our mental resilience together. Stay strong, love your fate, and I'll see you in the next video.